Coming up, huge sums of money are spent on keeping destructive fishing practices afloat. Ocean habitats are lost, and vulnerable species of fish, mammals and other wildlife are killed in the process.
Once we spawn them, the eggs come to this room.
A look at what sustainable fishing is. What, if anything, we can do to help. Veganism, is it just a fad?
You know, there are some people who say, I don't want to eat something fake.
Sales of fake meat plunged in 2022. A look at the issues facing this industry and whether a vegan lifestyle can still save the world.
The number of people who joined Veganuary have multiplied.
But first,
I was inside and I heard crack, crack, and I came out.
cars and homes submerged and black water contaminated neighbourhoods in northern New Zealand. Record storms have lashed the country this year.
Do you think it's climate change?
Yes, climate change is real.
This is just 2 degrees on TRT World. I'm Reagan Devine, welcome to the programme. New Zealanders have had a difficult summer. Thunderstorms, heavy rains, strong winds have all battered the north of the country. There have been a lot of images from the city of Auckland where several people were killed in flash floods and landslides. Summer in February in New Zealand is pretty warm. There usually is some rain, but not like this. Authorities say the intense weather is partly due to the climate crisis. Paris hosted an open-air exhibition in February. It's called Fragile Colosses, or Fragile Giants in English. French sculptor Michel erected statues of animals along the city's Hasmin Boulevard. The 10 artworks depict endangered and vulnerable species, including mountain gorillas and polar bears. Michel says they're meant to be a reminder of how fragile the natural world is.
On les empêche de se reproduire, on les bouscule, quoi. On prend toute leur place. On est, je dirais, comme des petits enfants égoïstes. On ne se rend pas compte qu'il faut partager et que la Terre ne nous appartient pas, elle appartient à toute l'espèce, elle appartient aux vivants et pas seulement à l'humanité. Je dirais que je suis inquiet. Bon, vu mon âge, je me dis, je ne verrai pas l'extinction de tous ces grands mammifères, sans doute. Mais bon, je sais à quel point c'est dommage. Mais j'ai peur qu'on ne puisse pas aller autrement parce que l'homme fonce droit dans le mur et puis il était peut-être né pour faire ça. Alors peut-être qu'il va disparaître et entraîner pas mal de grandes espèces avec lui. Peut-être que ça fait partie d'un cycle de la Terre. Je ne sais pas. Je ne sais pas.
The ocean's fish supplies are dwindling. I know it's hard to imagine. Seafood seems abundant no matter where you live, right? But the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization says an estimated 1/3 of all the edible seafood on Earth has already been hooked or trawled for us to eat. Sharon looks at what could happen if we don't give the oceans a chance to recover.
This seafood market in the Pakistani city of Karachi is thriving. On winter evenings, people flock to eateries that serve fish and prawns.
The demand for every kind of fish goes up at this time of the year. The types of fish that have few buyers during other seasons become favorites in winter. There is such a wide variety of fish, such as red snapper, Indian salmon, and others.
There's international demand for Pakistani seafood too, with exports going to other countries in the region, including China, Japan, and Saudi Arabia. But as demand for fish surges across the world, our oceans are paying the price. The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization says fish stocks are dwindling and fast. When sea critters are taken out of the ocean faster than they can reproduce, it's called overfishing and it's unsustainable. But how did it all start? Back in the 19th century, the demand for whale oil devastated whale populations. Many species still haven't recovered. Overfishing negatively impacts rates of reproduction, which is detrimental to ecosystems. Imbalances are created, which for the marginalized already vulnerable species.
Humanity has been waging a senseless and self-defeating war on nature, and the ocean is on the front lines of the battle.
But fish production is a complicated issue. More than 7 billion people live on the planet. About half rely on fish as a significant source of protein. With the human population expected to reach 10 billion by 2050, there's no way the status quo can continue. And then there's the economic impact. When fish disappear, coastal economies and jobs do too. But some are working to restore the health of our seas. In 2020, 14 countries responsible for 40% of the world's coastal lines pledged to end overfishing. It was the biggest ocean sustainability initiative ever taken. The aim was to better manage ocean jurisdictions by 2025. The private sector jumped on board. Some say they are now taking a sustainable approach. But producing seafood in a manner our oceans can maintain doesn't come cheap.
They'd pay more for food that was harvested in a sustainable way, particularly fish. So the fish that I like, cod, haddock, all these fish that used to have really, really high numbers, and now their numbers are dwindling. So if they were harvested more sustainably, then I would definitely pay more to have that fish.
I think that my decision really will be on the quality really of the food. If you're saying it's the same, then I guess I'll pay the cheaper one. That's my point of view. But I don't know. It really depends on the quality, and it depends on how it is presented to me.
Back at this restaurant in Pakistan, customers relish all the seafood they can eat, but there's no guarantee they'll be able to enjoy it in the months and years to come. Sharon Ogunleye, Just 2 Degrees.
Let's speak to Michael Kaiser in Edinburgh. He is a professor of fisheries conservation at the Lyell Centre, Harriet Wyatt University. Professor, it's good seeing you. A report by Statista says fish farms account for half the world's fish supply. So by many accounts, we've come a long way. Is overfishing still a really big issue?
Over 1 billion people depend on fish as the main source of protein and as a source of food, and also micronutrients. So fish produced by wild capture fisheries is extremely important, and we need to ensure that we have sustainable fisheries going forward in the future. What we have seen increasingly with time is that more and more fish populations are being overexploited. But the picture is different in different parts of the world. In some areas of the world, fisheries are well managed, and in other parts of the world, they are less well managed, and these are the areas where we need most attention.
I guess when you talk about fish being overexploited, you might be talking about tuna, Atlantic salmon, sturgeon even. Is the idea to get to a point where we rely 100% on inshore fish farms?
Undoubtedly, going forward, aquaculture is going to be extremely important, and it's certainly the area which has the greatest potential for growth in terms of food production. But if we were to manage our fisheries better, then we could produce more from wild-caught fish in the sea. Currently, global landings of wild-caught fish are approximately 80 million tonnes. If we were able to reverse some of the overexploited fish stocks in the world, then possibly we could take that to somewhere in the region of 110 million tonnes from wild capture fish stocks.
Interesting. Where do you think we are at right now when it comes to emerging technologies that prevent overfishing?
Undoubtedly, technology is going to play a very important role going forward, and technology developments have enabled us to start to explore some of the technologies that you just outlined there. So, for example, there are certain species of fish or certain sizes of fish that we do not want to catch. We want them to either avoid being caught in the net or escape from the net. This is where we're using light technology. We're also developing robotic technologies that will open doors within trawls to actually release fish that are unwanted from the net, and hopefully that will be done automatically going forward in the future. In addition to that, people are now starting to even think about using underwater drones that would actually herd fish towards nets to actually reduce the need for trawlers to be moving around in the ocean and burning lots of fossil fuels. So undoubtedly, I think fisheries will become more efficient, and efficient basically means that we can spend less time in the ocean, and the less time that humans spend interacting with the ocean, then the fewer environmental problems we will create.
All right, Professor Michael Kaiser in Edinburgh, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
And meanwhile, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration says seafood companies must meet certain criteria for their catch to be considered sustainable. Their impact on human communities, efforts to rebuild depleted stocks and bycatch minimization must all be taken into account. There are ways we can play our part. Firstly, try different types of seafood each time you go out or cook. Switching helps to keep fish stocks level and healthy. Ask the store or restaurant owner how the fish you've ordered was caught. Avoid methods like bottom trawling and blast fishing. Also, avoid purchasing species that are at risk from overfishing. It takes a bit of research, but there are resources online. And check the tag to ensure that what you're buying is coming from a sustainable fishery. They usually have strict rules for certification. And try sticking to seafood from your local fish market. They're often caught using less damaging fishing practices. The Veganuary campaign in January saw a lot of people trying veganism for the first time. Organizers of the challenge say more than 700,000 people had signed up, a new record. But do these short-term challenges work? Plant-based meat at one point looked like it might upend the real meat industry. But in 2022, stock in popular vegan company Beyond Meat, among others, plunged by about 76%. And the company was forced to fire 20% of its staff. Here's Dominic.
They imitate the taste and feel of meat, milk and cheese. Plant-based replacements appeal to the vegan palate and those wanting to stop eating animals. The vegan meat and dairy industry boomed throughout most of 2019 and 2020. The hype led to worldwide curiosity, sales and rapid growth.
I mean, in the first few years, we were easily seeing 10 to 12% growth across meat alternatives and dairy alternatives. Dairy alternatives is actually faring better. I think that's been one of the success stories within retail has been dairy alternatives.
But that's all changing, according to the International Republican Institute. The market research firm says interest in plant-based foods have dropped considerably. Supermarket sales of refrigerated faux meat fell by roughly 14% in 2022. Restaurants also saw sales plunge by double digits. Many analysts blame global supply issues because of the war in Ukraine and COVID-19. It was during the pandemic that people got a lot more familiar with their kitchen.
They want to experiment, and they want to try cooking more from scratch, and they want to try new recipes now that they realized, actually, there is a whole world of food out there I can experiment with. So we tend to call those transition foods.
We should probably start thinking about plant-based as being driving the health and sustainability agenda and meat reduction agenda versus necessarily driving vegan agenda. It's important that we service vegan needs, but it's also important that we really start focusing on health and sustainability of the food system.
Researchers say plant-based products require less land, need less water, and cause less pollution than animal agriculture, the environmental impact of which has become a major concern.
Greenhouse gas emissions are at record levels and growing. The commitment to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees is nearly going up in smoke. Without further action, we are headed to a 2.8 degree increase, and the consequences, as we all know, would be devastating.
Livestock production is responsible for more than 15% of global greenhouse gas emissions. A report by Stanford University and the University of California says if everyone on the planet switched to a plant-based diet, it would curb climate-unfriendly output for 30 years. It's an unlikely scenario, but technological advances in the food industry have shown that animal products could eventually be replaced. But experts predict there's still a long way before we get to that point. Dominic Brian-Mundi, Just 2 Degrees.
So what's driving the seeming dwindling interest in a plant-based diet? Dr. Nandita Shah is here to help us understand. She's the founder of Sharan, an organization that aims to help people heal themselves by connecting to animals and nature. Dr. Shah joins me now from Orville, India. Doctor, it's a pleasure seeing you. Thank you for your time. So
Thank you.
We just talked a bit about sales in popular plant-based companies dropping in 2022, like Beyond Meat. Their stocks dropped by 76% last year. Do you think veganism is losing its appeal?
So truly, I don't think so, because, you know, the number of people who joined Veganuary have multiplied each year exponentially. I think I'm seeing more vegans everywhere, more vegan entrepreneurs, more vegan restaurants, more vegan items in every restaurant. I think that, you know, maybe Beyond Meat and Impossible Meat were two of the main companies, and now there are so many companies mushrooming that perhaps they lost stocks, or maybe people are making their own plant-based meats. Also, you know, there are some people who say, I don't want to eat something fake. I'm one of those. Like, I don't go out and eat plant-based meat because I don't eat any meat, you know. I just don't want to eat a meat replacer. But I think it's something that's wonderful for people who are transitioning to a plant-based diet. And another thing is that some people think that fake meat is less nutritious than real meat. And actually, that's not true. Of course, sometimes it contains ingredients that may be, you know, some chemicals and things like that. But truly, if you think about animal products, when you eat an animal, you're eating all the things that went into that animal.
Right.
The antibiotics, the chemicals on the food, and you know, animal products have more pesticides than any plant because animals have eaten so much food to produce a certain amount of product, right? For example, it takes 12 kilos of grain maybe to produce 1 kilo of beef. So all the pesticide in 12 kilos of grain is in that 1 kilo of beef, and so we're consuming a lot of chemicals when we eat meat. But people don't realize this, and they think that fake meat has chemicals in it. So that might be one of the reasons.
Doctor, I apologize for cutting you, but just an hour before we started filming this episode, I was having a cafe latte with almond milk in it. Someone's first response to that was, wow, fancy. So my question to you is, do you think veganism is accessible to everyone, considering how expensive some vegan products are?
Personally, I think veganism is accessible to everyone. And, you know, I live in a country like India, which a lot of people are poor. And we teach people how to make their own vegan products, their own milks. And if you make milk from plants yourself, and it doesn't take much time, if you do that, then it has to be cheaper than animal milk, because you have to feed plants to animals to get the milk, right? And it's the same with meat. So if we can produce things ourselves, it'll be really easy. But, you know, once you start transitioning and once you start consuming plant-based meat and plant-based milk, after a while you just leave it and you go to real food, which is fruits and vegetables, grains, beans, and seeds. We don't need to kill animals to eat anymore.
Doctor, how you've just described your diet per se, it sounds inexpensive. But when you look at vegan advertising, they tell you about almond milk, coconut milk, oat milk, soy milk, and there are brands that are always in vision. Do you think the marketing around veganism targets just wealthy people?
No, you know, I think that veganism wants to reach out to everyone. And the only problem is right now that in order to sell those vegan products to a niche market, to a small group of people, it costs a lot to transport them, to deliver them, to have them in the shops and so on. But it's getting cheaper and cheaper every year, I believe, as compared to other food. And truly, within some time, it's going to, I mean, truly, animal products are subsidized all over the world, also in India and also in the West. but truly we are killing ourselves by eating these animal products because of the environmental consequences, right?
Yeah.
And also the health consequences. I'm a doctor and I'm treating patients every day, and I help them go on plant-based diet and they get well. You know, the cost of disease is, I always say, disease is always much more expensive than health.
All right. I don't have much time with you, maybe just 50 seconds. My producer tells me you live in a place called Oroville, which has been described as an experimental society. Just talk quickly about it and what it means for the planet.
So Oroville is an international community, and we have people here from almost every country in the world. And that's the beauty of Oroville. At the same time, you know, you can see exactly what's happening with veganism all over the world, because this is a microcosm of the whole world. And here you see that lots of people have become vegan, way more than any time in the past. And a lot more people eat meat than any time before. So both the things are happening at the same time, unfortunately.
Fantastic. Oroville is now on my bucket list. It was a real pleasure speaking with you. Dr. Nandita Shah, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
There's a big project underway in Türkiye to optimize how fresh water is being used across the country. That's as authorities try to navigate what some refer to as a mega drought. The water efficiency campaign will focus in part on preventing unnecessary water wastage in homes and businesses. The plan will also include the agriculture sector and provide a legal framework for managing the entire process. The WEC is being carried out under the watchful eye of Turkey's First Lady Emine Erdogan, and they're trying to get residents of the country more involved in the process. Well, it is an interesting campaign, and to get more info on it, I called my friend Mehmet Celik. He is the editorial coordinator of the Turkish newspaper Daily Sabah. Firstly, just talk a bit about Turkey's water problems, its drought problems. How bad exactly is it?
It is being affected particularly, because it is in the Mediterranean basin, and Mediterranean basin is one of the areas that is being affected very severely compared to the other areas. I mean, we see that with the low precipitation rates. In 2020, I think in fall in Turkey, I think there was a 50% decrease. So we see that with overground water resources, underground water resources, as well as, of course, meteorological drought that has affected Turkey with regards to rain and rainfall and snow and all that. Turkey is not a very water-rich country. It's a semi-arid country. Turkey has its water resources compared to its neighborhood. It has advanced its use of water and also has excelled in water management. But still, when we talk about drought, it's not something that we can predict how long it will last and when it will come. And now we're also talking about something called mega drought. And of course, Turkey has some transboundary waters like Euphrates and Tigris. So the issue that doesn't remain within Turkey's borders.
Where does Turkey get its fresh water from? And help us quantify what exactly does drought versus mega drought mean?
If we're talking about, for example, meteorological drought, it has to do with, the rain, for example, precipitation rates and all that. When it comes to agricultural drought, it's about use of water for agriculture and also the ground and surface waters. But mega drought affects Turkey and its region because it is in a larger area rather than a specific small part of a country. But if we look at actually Turkey as a country even, we see that drought is affecting Edirne in the northwest part of Turkey, but also we see huge, significant decrease in water levels in Lake Van, which is eastern Turkey.
The Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry, through this water efficiency campaign, wants to encourage people to use less water. I think the numbers are from producing 146 liters to 100 liters. They want us to start using a lot less by the year 2050. How do they plan on enforcing this?
Public awareness, something that, for example, the First Lady Emine Erdogan has initiated. She's one of the pioneers when it comes to environmental projects. She has launched the Zero Waste Project. And also she has a book, for example, called The World is Our Common House. Again, drawn attention to these environmental issues with regards to climate change and stuff. So public awareness is, I think, the most important aspect of this. So if the public is aware of the fact that Turkey is not a water-rich country, I think we can take things to the second step, and that should be informing the citizens after that awareness is created. So education is a huge part of that. But aside, when it comes to the policy side, intra-institution cooperation will also be a huge part of this campaign, because, when we think of water scarcity, maybe we think of drinking water and agriculture. But water scarcity is, of course, related to food security. It is related to economy. It is related to security.
And that's how we wrap this episode of Just 2 Degrees. If you missed anything, find us on YouTube. There are episodes there too. Hope to see you again. Bye.